Hello, good morning. Sorry for the slight delay. We were finishing the training, the previous training. Hi. Simona, I see you are in. Can you hear us?
I can hear you. Hi.
Perfect. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm fine, thank you. What about you?
Fine, thank you. We have participants already engaging with us.
Okay.
Since we just finished the previous one, I will give a couple of minutes. We can wait a couple of minutes for everybody to be able to join us, okay?
Okay, I see. Are we already live, or it's just the organizer?
No, it is us because the platform is somehow sequential and we needed to close the other one to be able to open this one, and we were late.
Okay, no problem. I will switch off my camera then, and then you can just give me.
Making, let's see, yeah, good morning. Okay. Okay. Give me 1 minute to also to check up with the top level interview that we were having as an introduction, because I don't see her here. So just give me a sec. Okay, she's coming. So if we can wait for 1 more minute. Meanwhile, I can open up the session. This is the second training that we are having today. We just finished one in relation to building R&D integral project ideas and visions. Right now we are focusing into, once we have the results or we start to have the technology embryos, how to think on taking them towards society and industry in relation to, in other words, exploiting the results. For that, we have with us Simona Pede. She participates in another project, which is Briefing, which is offering a series of seminars and trainings in relation to exploitation, because we know it is hard to address from very early stages. Simona, do you want to present yourself?
Sure. Sorry, I had to turn on my microphone. So, hello everyone, my name is Simona. I am an innovation manager in a company called BWCon, which is based in the southwest of Germany. And indeed, I'm also the coordinator of the project PREFET Briefing, which is a supporting coordination and supporting action for future and emerging technology projects. So later on, we're going to see together some key aspects of exploitation in Horizon 2020 project, and more specifically into future emerging technology project. But I see the main speaker is there, so I will just switch off myself.
Okay. Yeah, we also have with us Anna Meikes. She's CEO of Neuroelectrics, a member of the European Innovation Council Advisory Board. She was a PREFET researcher at the beginning, and then evolved into a very successful entrepreneur, and also a supporter to policymakers. Hi, Anna. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Yeah, pleasure. It's great to be connected. Sorry, I'm a few minutes late. There was a misunderstanding, but I'm super happy to be with you all.
Yeah, me too. We were in fact some minutes late ourselves because we were finishing the previous training. So this was also a delay. We wanted to interview you as an opening to this training on exploitation of results because of this life experience that you have gone through. It is not that often to have PREFET researchers that become entrepreneurs. My first question would be to go back to the beginning, okay? Somehow, when you were a young researcher, what would have been the key message, something you would have really liked to hear at that point?
Well, I think that one of the important things as a researcher, and I think that's why PREFET is such a great project. I think that, you know, in the European Innovation Council, we say that solving relevant problems in a responsible way, right? So deep tech to me is really important. I think you need to look outside and see what things need to be solved and how science can help them. So I think you have to be super ambitious. So PREFET to us was an amazing project because it really helped you to think really, really big and to put yourself a really, really huge scientific challenge. And if you really challenge yourself scientifically, even if you don't get to the objectives of the PREFET project, right? What you're going to develop is going to be great, right? Because you're targeting like the moon, right? So if you land in the stars, you're in a really well position, right? So my first recommendation would be to really focus on the science, but be really ambitious on the problem you're trying to solve. Don't do anything incremental, but really try to do something really revolutionary.
Taking notes. Because I really like this, and then we can share through the Twitter. Perfect. And so we would say at the beginning, dream, be ambitious, try to change the world, think big, which is really, really, really encouraging. And later on, when you are already a consolidated researcher, this is still the main recommendation?
Well, I think that I mean, one is to really do this deep tech, this really good science to solve a really meaningful problem. And then I think that as a researcher, you have to really be open-minded and then adapt your science to have an impact. And to me, this is a really, really difficult transition, right? When we say from science to the market, I think it's super hard to do. It takes many, many years to go from science to the market. And I think as a researcher, you need to adapt to the different stages. For example, you could be developing the technology forever, right, as a researcher, but at a certain point, you have to stop and say, okay, let's have an impact. Let's take the technology where we are. Let's do a prototype, which, by the way, it doesn't help a lot, because even if in European Commission or FED projects you have a prototype, it doesn't mean you have a product. The road from a prototype to a product, it's like the valley of death, right? Because even if you have a prototype that works, maybe it's not robust, the software doesn't work, you cannot scale it. So that to me was a total surprise as a researcher and scientist, that you think that because it works once, you have a product, and it just takes a tremendous amount of effort to make a real product or a real software or a real, impacting. So I think that as a researcher, you need to adapt to those phases to have an impact and try to develop something robust that works and can have an impact today. And then when you have that and you put it to the use of society, you're going to learn new things that are going to allow you to keep on developing the technology, right? So I think that it's like being ambitious, try to have an impact and implement something into society and have a positive impact. Then again, do another leap of technology, improve it, put it into practice, learn, then do another leap of deep tech, right? So because otherwise you always have the risk to be always on the deep tech science mode and never have an impact.
Great. I like this idea of looping and having impact. Also because I guess from the experience, while trying to have an impact, your next loop in deep tech is completely different to what you would have imagined if you had done it straight away.
For example, let me give you an example. We developed, this is our technology, which I just put in ET, which I adore. So this is the technology that it's a wireless EEG and brain stimulation device, right? So this wireless device with the electrodes that we developed thanks to FED was meant to do brain-to-brain computer interaction, right? Brain-to-brain communication, which was super ambitious goal. Now, instead of communicating brains, which is more on the Neuralink, Elon Musk, we decided to do medical, right? So we are using this technology to stimulate patients that they have problems with their brains or brain diseases. And one example is epilepsy. So because we developed this product and we went to the academics and to the hospitals, we started to learn that this could help patients with epilepsy. And then through the contact with the epileptic patients, with the neurologists, with clinical trials, with putting this into really the hands of patients, we learned that personalization was super important. So we went to ERC with an epilepsy brain modeling project that was really aimed to help these patients with epilepsy. So see, the difference is you could be developing technologies in a very kind of like high level mode, or you can really work with patients and doctors and then go back to science to solve those problems. So we would have never gone into epilepsy if we wouldn't have something to go to the neurologist and to show them and to work together to understand how we can really help these patients to reduce their seizures.
Perfect. And this is when you became an entrepreneur? How did it happen?
Well, I think that Julio, which is my co-founder, and we were not born entrepreneurs, but what happened is that at a given point, we were working for a company that went bankrupt, and it's like the Matrix, right? We were offered the blue and the red pill, so we could go home because we were just employees of that company, but we decided to do a management buyout, and at that point, we became entrepreneurs because we thought, having a scientific company that could have an impact was really meaningful to us. So we took the risk pill, and that's the moment where we became entrepreneurs, because we were faced with a decision, you know, whether you go home and take the easy way or whether you're going to fight for something you believe in.
Do you think it is very different mindset, the mindset when you were a researcher and when you are an entrepreneur, or somehow the baseline is the same?
Yeah, I think it's a misunderstanding, because we are super passionate about science. We adore science, but we think that having a company is like allows you to really achieve your scientific dreams in ways you cannot do in other places. So I think that there's normally a bias between science and business, or, you know, having a startup and doing an academic life, whilst I totally believe it's wrong. You know, like Julio has hundreds of papers, has an ERC, works with the best scientists in the world, in Boston, in Europe, in Asia, and he is working on a company. So he can do the most brilliant science, right? But we also have the capability to see the social impact and to take it where we want and see this helping patients. So to me, it's a beautiful combination if you have the right motivation, the right ethics, and you do the right science.
Great. I like that combination, motivation, ethics, and science. Okay. And to keep it going and to somehow press a little, what would you say that have been your main errors? I guess this process of taking risk pills takes us to make errors and otherwise to have successes that maybe at first we thought they were going to be errors.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that's why I'm in the EIC, in the European Innovation Council, I think we lack a true ambition. You know, I think that one of the errors is to be pleased with just playing on our backyard, right? I was very happy to achieve, you know, the Women Innovator Award of the European Commission. You know, I thought Europe was amazing, and Spain and Barcelona is a wonderful place. But, you know, the world is so big, and the playground is the world. And it really took me the courage to move to the United States to understand how, if you want to be successful, you really not only have to have ambition and a global mind, you really need to be on those countries. You really need to understand how America works, how Asia works, and how Europe works. And you have to play a role in those three continents. And I think that's one of the things that I think that it's an error in Europe, that we just think that if we are serving ourselves, you know, we are good and we are successful. Well, I don't think that's the case. I think that this is truly a global competition, and you need to play on that field.
Great. So this actually answers my last question. Why, I mean, how did you take the decision to have offices in Barcelona and also Boston, and what was the reason behind that? And I guess is to have a big playground.
A big playground. And also, you know, I was such a small rock star in Europe. You know, it's like I was called to participate in all these sessions and the European Commission and blah, 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 blah. And I thought I was someone, right? But then I went into the US and nobody knew me, right? And I had to start from zero. My name is Ana Maikes, I'm shaking hands. And it's, you know, it just taught me the lesson that, you know, you think you're doing fine and you're successful, but still you have so much to do and you haven't really achieved your full potential. And you have to be humble and just acknowledge that, you know, you have to keep on working. And if you really want to help epileptic patients or depression patients, they suffer all over the place, right? So you really need to push your comfort zone. You really need to go, you know, from zero again and really, you know, get harder challenges and progress. Because if you get too comfortable in your comfort zone and with all this clapping on the back, I think you have the risk of really don't move your company to the place where it could be.
Great.
Or your science, same thing. I mean, if you are a scientist here and you're publishing a paper and then you're super happy and then you think you have achieved your gold medal because you got published in whatever, right? But it's never enough. I mean, you have to keep on achieving other mountain peaks. You have to put yourself harder challenges. And when you do, you realize it's like, shoot, I thought I made a lot, I conquered a lot, but I did not. I still can do much more, right?
Great. I have a last question, but before I do that, there is a question from the audience. It says, how do you measure the right ethics? Do you define it by yourself, partners, or stakeholders? Even with good intentions, we can still make mistakes.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I mean, I think that the first thing that drives the ethics is the management and the founders of the company. So just as an example, during our life as entrepreneurs, we were faced with decisions. For example, do you use our brain technology for video games? Well, this was something that ethically, Julio and I, we didn't want to do. We didn't want to have our lives devoted to a company that would help video gamers to play. We didn't see the reason why, right? So one thing is the motivation, and why do you have a company or why do you do academic research? It has to be an inner motivation, and I think that's the ethical part. You have to believe in what you do, and you have to stick to that. And even if you don't have money and you will have more money working in defense or working in video games, you have to stick ethically to what you told your clients, your employees, and your partners that you were going to do. It's true that I am now part of many neuroethics panels, and last week we were with Facebook and other companies in the International Neuroethics Society. So I think that, we are a medical device company, so we are subject to a lot of regulations, manufacturing of medical devices, FDA. So you are under the watch. So the ethics are also like embedded in what you do, right? Because people are watching what you're doing. But still, I think there are like blind spots and places where there are difficult questions. For example, is your technology changing the identity or the agency or the privacy, or can be misused, right? So I think that as entrepreneurs, if you're in a hot area that can have impact in ethical issues, you need to engage in those conversations. So what I've done really is join neuroethicists, join a lot of the neuroethics company that are really asking me the difficult questions. And then as an entrepreneur, what I do is I say, okay, if I want to avoid misuse of my technology, I need to build the software and the devices in a way that when people are home, the grandson of a grandparent cannot use my technology. I mean, how do you protect the misuse of your technology from the company perspective, right? So I think these neuroethics debates have helped me to build the technology in a way that can prevent all these ethical issues. Another thing, when a patient or a kid writes me and they want to buy a device, I never sell them a device. I always say, I'm sorry you're suffering. I know you're desperate, but I cannot help you. You need to go to your doctor. You need to go to your hospital, and they need to contact me. You cannot cure yourself. You have to go through the clinical way. So that's another way in which we entrepreneurs can be ethical, right? Because you cannot, mislead patients into, you have a cure. No, you have to go to your doctor and to the system. And if you're not happy with the system, I'm sorry, I cannot help you.
Okay. The person that made this question answer, super interesting to hear your answer, especially from the business perspective. So it really should come from the company's identity in your case.
Yeah, I think so. It's your it's your DNA, right?
Perfect. So my last question, just to somehow bridge towards the training, is that, and it is provocative, this time not to you, but to the participants in the training. I just mean to be pedagogical. I am not judging anybody. But it is not right to listen to researchers saying, I work at a research institution and therefore I do not participate in exploitation of results. What do you think about this?
Well, I think that's a tremendous mistake because, I mean, I do love to work with scientists, and I think that scientists are moved by a desire to know, but also a desire to help. And I think that it's kind of like a lost opportunity and a pity that you're an academic publishing really great work and you don't participate in the implementation of that work in real life. So, you know, in my 6 years in Boston, you know, when you go to MIT, when you go to Harvard, they don't have this kind of ethical debates. It is embedded in their culture that most of the professors in MIT are both academic, but they're also super engaged, either in startups, either in venture capital funds, even in companies. And it just creates an extraordinary ecosystem in which innovation and science and business are super linked together. And it's just, why are they the most successful life sciences place on earth? Because of that combination of academia and business. And so I do believe this is a great mistake in Europe, that we don't mix businesses and academics, and it's considered the dark side. I think it's a misunderstanding that businesses are just there to make money and exploit people and exploit, you know, workers and charge to patients. And I think that it's true that academics, I think, is selfish to just be comfortable writing papers and publishing and don't really making the effort to make sure that helps humanity.
Thank you very much, Anna. It has been a pleasure. We will send you some little, let's say, thankful souvenir. It's a 3D printed souvenir of the sentence PREFET, the sound wave of the sentence PREFET, the future of technology. We are also offering it to the participants in a game jam we are organizing around future and emerging technology trends during the weekend. And we also wanted to share with you. Thank you very much. And I leave the stage to Simona because from your let's say from the threats that you threw us, I think she can really catch up and do a great training. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, and good luck to all the participants. Keep on pushing. I'm sure you're going to do an amazing training, and I'm always happy to respond any other questions. So thank you, Simona. Thank you, Eva.
Bye.
Thank you very much, Anna.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. So it's a pleasure for me to start the training after such an inspiring introduction into the topic of exploitation. So I really hope I am at the level of Anna, so welcome again also from my side. I introduced myself briefly before. I am Simona Peda. I will today introduce you into the topic of exploitation. So we're going to see together what exploitation means and how you can achieve it. So I guess you got really already an inspiring introduction into the topic already, but we're going to see a little bit more pragmatically what does it mean exactly. So which are the steps you have to take to do exploitation and how this can be done. So now I hope I can share my screen with you. If Eva give me the right to share my screen.
I think you have.
Okay, now I can see it. Great. Okay. So please tell me if you can see my screen now.
Yes, perfect.
Great. So as I would say, this is just an introduction into the topic. Anna already very much explained the fact that this is a complex activity which actually takes a lot of years to be done perfectly. So I don't have today the aim of really explaining you briefly in just an hour what exploitation is, but I hope this can give you some introduction. So as I say, why I'm doing this training today, because I am also responsible for coordination and support action within the Future and Emerging Technology program, which is called Briefing. And there we are supporting a researcher within this program in trying to explore the innovation potential of the research and find a way to exploit the research results. So this is about me, but I also would like to understand a bit better who is in the room and which experience you have. So as far as I know, we have a mixed target of audience today. So we have people which are coming from the research side, of course. I would like to know, maybe if you can briefly write it down in the chat, if you already are involved in some Horizon 2020 project, maybe even more specifically into more specifically in the part where you are like, let's say, in the DEFETIV Future Emerging Technology program. So if you would like to write it down just briefly in the chat, in the meantime, I can check your result just to give me a feeling how many of you already have experience in this. Okay, I'm checking the chat in the meantime. Okay, I don't see anybody writing down. Okay, I will just assume you are shy still for the moment, and I will start my presentation anyway. So I just need to adjust my screen for a second because I see I'm having an issue. So I really hope I can adjust this. So give me a sec. So can you see my screen now?
We see your screen, but we don't see your presentation, just your desktop.
Okay. I really didn't see what the problem might be. So let me. Can you stop my screen sharing for a second, Eva, so that I can check again?
Sure. Let me check. Let me just give me a minute.
So
okay.
In the meantime, I can tell you that what I want to do today is to explain you what exploitation is like in a proposal stage. So how you should develop your exploitation plan while you are trying to exploiting. So to define your exploitation plan while you're writing a proposal. And I also explain you a bit the difference between exploitation and communication and dissemination into the context of Horizon 2020. And then we're also going to have an introduction into the topic of technology transfer. But then if you are interested into the more business exploitation side, so also going towards what Anna was discussing with you today, on Friday at 9, you're going to have the possibility to have another training on the topic together with my colleague Timothy. Is responsible for the business activity in our company, and he's going to explain you a little bit how you can conduct a market research, how you can write a business plan. So now I really hope I can share my screen again, and Eva, you should help me with that because I really, okay, you gave me the possibility again, very nice. Okay, let me see if you can see it now. Okay, let's try this again. Can you see my screen now?
Now it's perfect. Perfect.
Okay. So what is exploitation? You possibly all know that exploitation is described to be as the use of results for commercial purposes, but also in the context of Horizon 2020, we describe exploitation also for future public policy making. And if you have been involved in a Horizon 2020 program before, you know that it is also a commitment you made within the grant agreement model. It is really required to beneficiaries that they must engage into exploitation activity during the course of the project. So you should do this either by yourself, doing further research or looking for commercialization potential and industry exploitation, or this can be done then later on by others by licensing your technology to third parties. And this is a so-called best effort clause, so it means that you should try it your best, so to say. So you should, it is a commitment that you really do during your project, do not just do research, but you also try to think very early on exploitation of your research results. And that's why I think it is crucial, and this is my message today, to start to think about exploitation as early as possible in the process, and possibly even already in the proposal stage. So we saw together already that you have to do it because it is a commitment you take within the grant agreement, but it is very important that it's not just something you write down on paper and you make as a commitment, but rather that you really start to have some thought on exploitation pathways and exploitation plan during your proposal stage. And if we have a look on how exploitation is described in Horizon 2020, we find out this definition. So exploitation is an exploitation plan must describe some clear objective you want to achieve, and this objective need to be adapted to each different relevant target user that you identify. And there are three main let's say, so three main pillars within an exploitation plan in Horizon 2020. First of all, you should define the IP protection measure that you want to adopt for protecting your technology, and there are different results you can obtain with your research. And the second and third pillar are defining a correct exploitation and dissemination strategy, and then this build then the final pillar, which is the exploitation strategy itself. This is sometimes a very difficult activity, so it is not easy if you are starting as a scientist to be able to understand exactly at the beginning what does exploitation looks like. So that's why already in the proposal stage you can let you guide by some guiding questions that can help you trying to understand which are the topic and the point that you need to tackle within your exploitation activity. So in the proposal stage, you can have already a kind of situation analysis related to your project and the ambitions you are having. And here you can ask yourself some questions. I took these questions from a very useful material of the European IPR help desk. So I really encourage you to check their material, because they have a very good overview on not just IP protection, but also how exploitation and dissemination in Horizon looks like. As I was saying, it really helps you within your consortium to ask yourself some meaningful question on how we can exploit your result and how can you define an exploitation plan. And the first question you're going to ask yourself is indeed which are the key exploitable results of your project. So it might be more than one, so you must identify them all as far as possible, of course, in the proposal stage. And you need to also assess how is the value for the further use going to be measured and going to be assessed for these results. Of course, a very important part that you need to tackle in this stage is also the IP protection of your results. So how does your IP strategy look like? How are you going to protect the different kind of results that are going to emerge? And for this, it is very crucial that already in the proposal stage, you really think about how share ownership of results within a consortium is going to be addressed. So this is a very important issue that many times it is under-evaluated, especially when you're writing a proposal, because you think, in a way, it's still too early to think about this, or you are not the one in the consortium, let's say, or in your institution, you usually take care of IP protection. But still, I think it is an effort needed to already in the proposal stage go and check which is the IP background that you're bringing into a proposal, how this is protected, and which are the terms and conditions you're going to establish, for the later exploitation of results which are going to be produced in a collaboration effort within your consortium. So if you don't do this in the proposal stage, it might turn out later on that it is too late for this spot. So I heard also of consortia which later on might have some need for mediation and negotiation in order to find a way of how to, let's say, split the intellectual property within the consortium. So this is definitely an issue that should be tackled as early as possible. Then you want to ask yourself how you are going to use this result. And if you are writing a proposal, of course, you have to ask your question towards how to address the core topics and the challenges which are written out there, also in terms of impact. But also you need to be asking yourself how you're going to use this result later on also for other kind of uses. So this is also looking into the future. And what is also important is that you define within the consortium who are the main innovator which will drive this commercial exploitation effort. It is so, Anna and Eva mentioned it before, so sometimes researchers think they are just doing the research part and they are not concerned about exploitation, but I think this is important that you start, everybody in the consortium has awareness on the fact that they should be also be somewhat engaged in this exploitation activities. So as Anna was saying, you should really also show your drive and your ambition in this respect. But in many cases, it's also very much advisable to have a partner in the consortium, which is very much dedicated also to the exploitation of the results. They really make sure that this part is tackled during your research project, and that you have some dedicated effort which are regarded to this activity. So going forward with the questions, you can also ask yourself which other results are going to be produced. So sometimes you also have unexpected results that you cannot imagine in the proposal stage, and also you want to know maybe how this result can also be maybe licensed to third organizations. So which are the terms and conditions you are going to adopt for giving out your result toward organizations that are outside of your project. And then, of course, it is of great importance to be able to identify possible application area for your research results, which might even go behind your research field. So in the beginning, of course, this is the main focus of your attention, but it is possible that your technology or you're working on can also be applied in other areas. So you can have already this spot very early to try to see which can be in the future possible application area. And also, it is very important, especially in such a public funded program as Horizon 2020, to have some thought on the social impact of your research. So how can your results actually affect the society, which is the benefit that your research is bringing to the greater good in the society. So how can this result also be used in the future for policy making? So how can they impact also the future of our society and our everyday life? And then if you really also have the drive and the willingness to engage in commercial exploitation, you should start to also consider which are the market that you can address and which are the customer you have. And while looking into that, you can ask yourself which are the needs or the problem that your technology is addressing and how you can solve this. And finally, as I was saying before, an exploitation plan also comprehends a very big part about communication and dissemination. So what you also want to have is ask yourself very early which are the key messages that you want to communicate related to your project. So what is new about your project, what is relevant, what can capture the attention of an audience, which are the target groups you want to address, how can you reach them, so which are the channels that you need to use to reach different target groups. So all these questions are supposed to help you going through already in the proposal stage, in the definition of strategy for the exploitation of your research. But as I said before, sometimes there is a lot of confusion around the terms of exploitation and communication and dissemination. So it is sometimes hard to define exactly what these terms mean and how you can separate one activity from the other. So I really want to give you just a quick overview on how this activity in the framework of Horizon 2020 actually differentiate from one another. And these very nice infographics, which I took also from a report from the European IPRL desk, give you a quick summary in a nice visual way. So when we talk about communication in Horizon 2020, we mean an activity which is very much focused on informing about your project. So not necessarily just about your result, but in general, raising awareness on the existence of your project and on the research you are doing. Differently, dissemination is rather trying to describing and making your result available to a greater public. So it is indeed also a communication activity, but it's very much dedicated to opening up your result to a greater audience. Finally, you distinguish exploitation by the fact that the exploitation is really a strategy that you set up to describe how you will use these results. So, and I think you have a lot of resources you can dig into that explain you really how this is done. So if we want to have a quick look to see the difference between this activity, we could say that communication has potentially a quite wide audience. So you need to be, as we were saying before, you need to be able to identify the different target groups you want to address. And this can range from scientists to the citizens or policymakers. So it is quite big, and for all of them you need to really define a well-designed strategy on how you communicate, especially because you are the expert of your field, but in the policy-making area or in the greater audience, not everybody is aware or it's able to understand also this technical and scientific language you are using. So you also need to adapt this to a different kind of audience. And this is an activity which starts immediately. So when your project is approved, you can potentially start to communicate about it. And it is useful to do it. Why? Because you have the possibility to really raise awareness on your project, but also you can start to make some first contact with people outside your research group, which later on can be profitable for further dissemination and exploitation activities. So it is definitely something that is worth to do it. Dissemination is instead something that you can start to do when you have some results to show. So in the moment where you have something to show, this is the possibility to start your dissemination activity. This is also, again, a commitment you make, since your research is funded by public money, that you really open up your results. So in sense of open science, that you make them available to a greater audience. And this can be done also towards different audience, which range from the scientific community to the industry or the policymaker. And this is done in the way that you all as scientists know, so by publishing paper, publishing scientific magazine. And very important, this is an activity that you should consider while you have also had a look on the IP protection for your results. So it is really crucial that your dissemination activity go in parallel with your IP protection activity. So you should have a clear strategy on how to protect your results, because you don't want to encounter in the problem of disclosing some of your results too early, maybe preventing you by the possibility to file a patent later on. So also in the dissemination, it's important that you have an agreement on a consortium level where you really, the partner are all aware of what they can disseminate and with time. And this should be done in parallel also with your IP protection activity. Finally, exploitation is really the use of the result that you can make from a commercial or societal or even political point of view in terms of policymaker. So it is really, in this case, in exploitation, you involve the industry, which can range from SME to big corporates. And in case you're not interested in a commercial exploitation, but rather in making an impact also from a societal point of view, it's true that your result can also have an impact in terms of policymakers. So policymakers are definitely also one of the targets of this activity. And we are going to see together through this training how exploitation can be done, so which activity can be performed to do exploitation. And usually exploitation starts towards the end of a project or anytime you have some results that can really be exploited. So in that moment, you can start to proceed with your exploitation activity. The Commission already give you a lot of tools that can help you to perform exploitation and communication and dissemination activities. So you might be familiar with some of the tools that are listed in these slides. So this is also available online. You find the sources and all these resources later on also in a final slide where I collected all the material I use. So you have, there are some tools, for instance, the Horizon dashboard or the Horizon Result platform, where really the content of your research and of your project are listed online and give you also a kind of visibility towards external stakeholder for them to be aware of the existence of your research and be able to see if there are any possible collaboration potential or wider exploitation potential. And you may also be familiar with the tool as the Innovation Radar. This is indeed a questionnaire that many projects do at the end of their research path, and it serves to identify really the innovation potential within your project. So you go through a questionnaire that really also helps you see which are the market-related potential that your research has. And finally, there are some different support activity that you can take advantage of already in the framework of Horizon that can really help you also in defining a suitable dissemination and exploitation strategy. You have, for instance, this Horizon Result Booster, which is really dedicated and is a free services, of course, to help you in defining an exploitation strategy. And later on, if you really want to go into the market yourself, to define also a business plan. And then you have also coordination and support action as the one I am coordinating, that really provide you also a lot of training and introduction into the topic, as well as mentoring and coaching activity and opportunity to get in touch with the industry so that you can already in a very early stage be aware of all these issues. So in a way, we could say that you should really consider your project exploitation plan as a business plan for exploiting your research results. So this business plan, in a way, should tell you how will you in the future use the results of your research. And here again, it is very nice said, but it is hard to be done in practice. So also in this case, there are some questions that can guide your work. So first of all, you really need to understand which are the needs that your project responds to. So you need to identify really if your research and your technology respond to a need which is out there in the market. And many times we say that you need to identify the problem which is there, and also which is then the solution that you are giving to this problem. And it is very useful also, even if you are in a low TRL level, to start to look around and see which other solutions are already out there and which are available and that can be exploited or can be seen as a possible competitor to your solution. So you, in this sense, you should also try to look out for competition or competing solution and technology very early. You want to also consider which new knowledge your, in terms of results, your project will generate, also starting from an assessment of the state of the art in your area. And also you should really be clear about who will use these results later on. So this is something sometimes when you're focusing on research, you don't have already the final user in mind for our technology, but this is something that you should try to engage as early as possible in the process. So I think Anna before highlighted very nicely. So she say, I wouldn't never have achieved what I've achieved if I wouldn't go there and talk to doctor and to patients. So it's really important that you keep in mind, depending on the technology you're working on, of course, it can be something dedicated to more a business-to-business business model. But in the end, you really need to have in mind who is the final user of this technology. And of course, somebody will use your technology just if you see a benefits on it. So you want to find out which benefit can be delivered by your research and how big is this benefit. So so also compared to other solutions already available. And related to communication, again, the question, how will the end user be informed about the results you generated? So how can become aware of this result? And as I was saying before, you can actually consider your exploitation plan as a kind of business model. That's why very much in this day, we tend to advise also researchers to start early considering a tool as the link canvas that you see in this slide as a potential tool to very nicely identify the point I was addressing before in a quick way. So this is a tool which is actually, you may be familiar already with the business model canvas. This is an evolution, let's say, of the business model canvas. It is indeed very much used in the startup community in order to identify the value proposition of a service or a product, and to identify which are also the customer for such a service or a product, and the problem that this product or service is addressing. But I think in an early stage can also be used in a consortium to get some clarity on how you could define your exploitation strategy. So here you can see, if you start from the left, you see that you have the possibility to identify in a short visualized way the problem you want to address, the solution you are proposing for this problem, and also to define clearly which is the unique value proposition you are delivering, which need to be something different from what is already out there in the market. And also gives you the opportunity to think very early also on your customer sector. So which are the target groups you're addressing, which is the potential user of your technology, who are the early adopters. So this is just a suggestion as a tool you could use within your consortium to get some clarity on your exploitation plan. So we saw a bit why it is important to address exploitation very early, already in the proposal stage, but we also want to see how exploitation is actually addressed during the course of the project, and why you should include exploitation and innovation management activity during the lifetime of your project and in general in your research activity. Planning innovation activity is important because in Europe we have indeed what we can even define a European paradox. The fact on one side we have a very strong science base, but on the other side we had quite a weak innovation performance, meaning that in terms of exploitation we are not so strong as some other countries are. So thinking early on innovation exploitation activity really is an issue that is now very much highlighted into Horizon 2020, because it is of course important that if we invest money in public research, then in the end some bigger value for the society comes out. So nowadays it's also why program as PREFET have converging to the European Innovation Council, and there is a stress and a focus on try to exploit your research results. And I know it is difficult when you are in a very TRL low level to try to think about it, but still I think this is a very useful exercise. So during the course of your project, which are the factors that might impact your exploitation activity? So on one side, you can look into cooperation with industry partner. This is already useful, for instance, in the proposal stage to engage in your consortium an industry partner, which may be the one in charge of the exploitation activity later on. So we see it before, a company or a corporate has usually already an established market, has already familiarity in business exploitation, so they can really help you out in defining these activities. But also you can look into cooperation during the course of your project to get in touch with the industry stakeholder that might later on become a potential licensee of your technology. So cooperation is definitely important. What is also important is acquire as much as possible market knowledge and awareness, trying to bring into your project some external market perspectives. So this can really give you, even if you are in a low level TRL stage, the possibility to get some feedback that you can incorporate into your further research. And the same can be said about the exploitation activities. So actively disseminate your research results, give you the possibility to really get some feedback that you can use in an iterative process to modify the course of your research. In this case, we can see that in general, in the past, innovation was considered to be kind of a linear process. You would consider that you go from one step to the other. So you start with the research, then at some point you consider the market opportunity, and then you go toward exploitation. But actually, nowadays, there is very much the agreement on the fact that innovation is actually a cycle. So it is an iterative process. And many of the steps that you see listed here, which it's an infographic, which I took from a report from the Director General for Research Innovation. So some of these steps can definitely be run in parallel. So these are not necessarily you need to wait till the end to start looking out for exploring market opportunities. It is really important that you address all the points which are in the slide as early as possible into the lifetime of your project, also thinking about the potential protection of your results. And it is true indeed that of course, the activity you can perform are also linked to the TRL level in which you are. So if you are in TRL level 1, of course, it might be too early to think about defining an IP portfolio or for your project, but still, when you're starting already in TRL 2 or 3, even if many researchers don't feel this is true, you can already start to conduct some preliminary market research. So you, even if in this very low stage of your TRL, you can really try to look out for a different kind of opportunity, and you can start to integrate innovation activity, innovation management within your project. For that, it is very useful to have an interdisciplinary team, as we saw before, and this is also one of the focus, in fact, to have this multidisciplinary science, and having, as I said before, also a partner which is dedicated to this activity may be very, very useful and very profitable. So when you go a little bit more high in your TRL, when you start to do validation in the lab, you can also start to look out for potential competitive solutions, which are potentially building a competition to the one you are developing. And you can even start at this point, but even earlier, already in TRL level 3, to really think about IP protection. So you see, this is of course just a simplification, but some activity may start earlier than you may have thought. And Especially the focus is in this case of exploitation of in the point that we were seeing before, defining and exploring market opportunities. And this is an activity which comprehends the fact that you should gain a good knowledge of the market in which you are moving, or that you can potentially address with your technologies. And how this is done, this is an activity which is quite broad and comprehend different tools that you can use. So you can go from doing market scans, but also you can get in touch with potential partners or even consumer involving already the final end user to see what they think about it. And when we talk about preliminary market research and technology transfer, we need to consider the fact that there are definitely two kind of markets you can address. On one side, you have the market of the innovation developers, which are the one that might be interested in commercializing that technology. So this is the market for licensing, for joint venturing. And on the other side, you have the market of the innovation buyers. So everyone, which is the potential end consumer of a product or service, which is realized through your technology. So these are, when you're doing a preliminary market research, these are the two target market you wanna consider. I'm not going too much in detail on this because, of course, as I said before, my colleague Timothy on Friday is going to show you a bit more in details how you can really perform a market research from a qualitative and quantitative point of view. So if you're interested into that, you can definitely connect on Friday. And also what is important at this stage, we said it before, is also performing some kind of competition analysis. So even in this case, you have two kinds of competitors that you should keep in mind. So the one which builds a competition in terms of developing a technology that can be a substitute to your technologies, and the competitor that you will have in the market once you are selling a product or services which is done through your technology. So also in this case, these are the two levels that you should analyze. So wrapping up, which are the different kind of innovation activity that you should engage with during the course of a project? We said before, it's very important that you start prospecting before you disseminate your research results. So you need to have a procedure within your consortium to really identify rapidly the results that need to be protected and agree on how to disseminate them before you start to publish a paper that later on can be considered as a disclosure activity, which might really prevent you from filing a patent. You should consider the topic of ownership of results, so how this is settled within the consortium, who has the access rights for the commercial exploitation. And this is also an activity which starts already in the proposal stage. Then you can implement different related innovation activity that goes through validation activity, the definition of an IP strategy for your project, but also the possibility of granting licenses maybe to a third party. And finally, you should engage in potential contact to external stakeholders, so finding potential partner and even source of finance for financing the next step into the commercialization pathways. So this is a very short summary of what exploitation innovation activity during a project lifetime could look like. So in case you have any question, feel free to write it down in the chat, of course. I'm checking also the time to see if we are on track. Okay, so I'm going to the next step, which is a very short introduction into the concept of a technology transfer. You may be familiar already with it, and you may have heard of it for sure, even if you didn't engage so far in any technology transfer activity. What is technology transfer? So we can define technology transfer as the transfer of technology from university or research institution to any third party which is capable of commercial exploitation. And technology transfer is a process which involves not just transferring the technology, as the name says, but within the technology transfer process, you can transfer even the knowledge you have acquired, the methodology, the skills in terms of the fact that you are building a next generation of people that can work on this technology. You can share methods for manufacturing, for instance, or you can transfer a prototype. So these are the different kind of activities you can perform. And in a very simplified way, just to simplify the concept, we could say that there are two main stages in the technology transfer process. The first stage is really about creating value to innovate, so generating and identifying the innovation that you want to transfer. So there is in this stage, it is very important that you do you first identify and then assess the technology you want to transfer. So you see that not every element of what you are developing might be useful later on for a commercial exploitation, or it is not relevant to protect every part of your technologies. It is also filing a patent, for instance. It's a very costly process which requires quite a long time and is not always advisable to do. So you may want to assess, first of all, which are the technology which are really have a potential for exploitation and that can be then considered within a technology transfer process. And once you have assessed and identified a technology that can be transferred, then you're going to start all the protection phase. So first of all, you need to define a value proposition for your technology. So identify also which are the business opportunity connected to it. Later on, you can start also with the help of technology transfer office that can be in your institution to see what can be protected and how can this be done. So as I say, this is a complex process. So the European Commission already offer a lot of support and activity in this sense, as the European IPR desk, but you also have mostly in a different research institution, you always have a technology transfer office that can really help you going through this process. So the technology assessment process, and then defining an NLP strategy for the technology you want to protect. So I'm seeing there is some questions.
Yes, most of them were answers to your preliminary question to who they were. There are some ERC researchers. There is also one national contact point and Pathfinder expert. And we also have one of these ERC projects is already working into a FET open draft proposal. So I hope, in case you want to add anything in relation to this.
Okay, I see. I got just very quickly. So I see just one question here. So I'm not sure if
the mission, and then there is another comment. It's still a comment rather than a question. That there is a mission canvas from Strategizer, the same team behind the business model canvas, which is a good tool, both of them. So maybe you want to add something in relation to this.
Yes, definitely. So the business model canvas is indeed a good tool. It's very much used in the startup community. What is the difference? So in case you really have a business, the business model canvas guides you through and also in identifying revenue streams, identifying the potential key strategic partner you have, in defining all the aspects that are related to a business. Why did I say that a lean canvas can be better? So the lean canvas comes from the lean startup theory and movement, where it is very much the idea that generating a product or service is an iterative process where you pretty much involve the final user and the customer into this process. And that's why the focus in the lean startup approach is very much on try to identify if there is a problems and a need that your product or services, or in this case, your technology address. So it is very much customer driven. It has a whole part of the lean startup which is dedicated to the customer development process, so how you develop your customer. So that's why you can actually use both tools. It was just a suggestion. I think the Lean Canvas in this case, it was a bit of a simplified model, because if you just have a technology, you don't want to go too much into details now in defining a prices model or the revenue stream and all these aspects, but you rather want to focus on which are your customer segment, which is the problem you're addressing, how does your solution look like, which is the value proposition you define for it. So indeed, the focus is a bit more on this, but both tools actually are fine. So if you're using the one or the other, it doesn't make any huge difference. So it was just a suggestion. So I hope I could comment on this, reply on this. So just going back to what we were saying. So in terms of technology transfer process, once you have done the first part of the process, then you will step into the second one, which is really the one dedicated in developing the partnerships, meaning that you will look out for potential partner for a technology transfer. So in third parties which might be interested in licensing your technologies. And when you identify them, you're going to start to engage with them and see which of them might be actually interested in engaging such a process. And if you find somebody which want to engage, then you get to the next stage, which are the one of the negotiation and finally of the contracting. And just to give you a feeling, so in the end, what is then commercialization? We could say that commercialization is a specific case within the technology transfer process. And in a way, it is involved as sales, because it starts when the partner, the party which is transferring a technology, receive a kind of compensation for giving up some of its rights or all the rights to a technology. Why would a scientific institution be willing to engage into commercialization is, of course, because you can get some kind of recognition for the discovery you've made. So it's a way also to be recognized on an international level, but also, of course, there is a monetary motivation also behind it, because licensing revenue can be used also to later on fund further research and education activities. And also this can be something which is related also to the kind of public money you are using to do your research. So it is a commitment you make. It can also be useful to attract further talent to your institution, because if you are really strong in commercializing your research, this could also be an advantage for a university or a research center. So there are different motivations that might be guiding a commercialization path into a research institution. And we have definitely different channels to do technology transfer. So we saw before that technology transfer is not just about transferring the technology, but also the whole knowledge and know-how they acquire during your research. So some formal channel of technology transfer are indeed also training and education, of the fact that you engage in collaborative research with other institutions, or that you do some technology consultancy services. But indeed, the most common practice of technology transfer is commercialization. So commercialization happens when you are selling parts of your right to your technology to a third party, and the two most common way of doing this are patenting and licensing, or the creation of a spin-off. So when you are patenting and selling the license of a patent mostly to a third party, you get a monetary compensation for this, and you're selling this to an institution that is in the position of exploiting this technology for business exploitation. While if you create a spin-off, this is something, it's like a startup which is created out of a university. So you really need to have a management team, so somebody which, as Anna was saying before, wants to make also the next step, so going from the research to the market. And it's very important in this case that you have a good management team. So if you engage in the creation of a spin-off, you need to be aware that you will not just doing research in this moment, but you're also gonna be busy trying to really cover all the business aspects related with it. And so which are the partner which you can look out to buy a license for your technology? Usually there are two main options. So on one side you have established companies, so these are the one which already have a lot of resources in terms of money, of course, but also in terms of positioning in the market. So they already are established in the market, and by acquiring your technology, they are able even to further develop it or exploit it immediately in terms of business exploitation. So they can have a short-term return, so to say, in the investment they make. On the other side, you could also license your technology to a startups. They definitely, in many cases, have the knowledge and also the business knowledge in order to commercially exploit a technology. The difference compared to an established company is that mostly they will still need to develop a market, so they will need to still look out for customer and building up the market, and they can do this either by sub-licensing part of the technology, maybe also with bigger company, or it is a process that anyway will last longer and will bring some results, let's say, rather in a longer term. But in case you are the scientist that say, yes, I want to make the next step, so building a spin-off, it's also an option, and I would say that nowadays is even more, it becoming even more important, because there is a strong focus on, as I was saying before, really on exploiting all the effort that is made in the research. So technology-based data are becoming more and more important. That's also why a lot of universities nowadays have special incubator and acceleration program also to try to give you all the supporting environment to go from your research to the creation of a spin-off. So a spin-off in this sense is a technology-based startup which is has the aim of commercialize a technology into the market. And why it is built, so usually you first build your spin-off, and then in a second stage the technology is licensed to the spin-off under some preferential condition from your university. It can also be that the university of the research institution take some kind of participation into the company in terms of equity of other benefits that are offered to you. When you should consider in building a spin-off, as I said before, it is not for everyone, of course. Sorry, it is not for everyone. So you should consider it if you think you have a technology which really have a great added value, which can be exploited on the market. So you should have done all your homework before in terms of market research, and you should be aware that this really has potential. And it is also a commitment that a management team makes. So building a spin-off means you need to have a competent team behind it, which is really able to do this process, which is not easy at all. So it might take a lot of time. You still possibly need to do some research to further develop your technology. But as I say, you really need to be in the position to be talking to investors, to acquire financings, to do all the activity you need to do to bring your technology to the market. So this is an activity that requires some motivation, some entrepreneurial motivation. Of course, you are encouraged to do so, but you should consider it really if you have this strong management team. And on the other side, if this condition does not apply to you, then maybe licensee might be a better option. So if you can license your technology to a third party, you still have then your university or research institution have then some further resources that can be invested in the research. Okay, so looking at my time, I'm yeah.
Yes, we're
Exactly.
to rush.
Exactly.
Thank you very much
I'm
for
actually
the
done, yeah.
overall scope. It is not hard to, I mean, it is not easy to summarize everything all together in such a way. Thank you very much. There is a comment from somebody. I will try, Rebecca, I will raise this question through the forum so Simona can answer you through the forum for the event in the EU Academy platform so we don't delay the next session. Okay?
Okay, yes, I will have a look into this. Thank you very much from my side. Sorry, I couldn't check the chat in the same time, so it's.
I was doing it, and we were doing. I mean, we were checking that. So that's why I know there is this pending question. I will transfer it to the forum, to the chat, to the events forum.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Simona.
Okay, thank you very much, and have fun through the next session.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.